Johnny Depp, and she would make a remark about Johnny Depp and say he's from Kentucky. So okay, fine. So
welcome back to my
that
channel.
tells you, how long
the
I was
court
a
is
kid
on
and I
lunch
knew
right
who
now.
Johnny Depp was. But I can tell you, I've not ever seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and I know that all these fans are. I'm going to probably get haters now. Don't hate on me. I'm a busy lady. I work in news.
I also know Johnny Depp, like Edward Scissorhands. You know, I know like the '90s movies, not like the newer stuff.
So my grandma took me to see Edward Scissorhands in the theater. We saw that, and I saw Donnie Brasco in the theater. But anyway, I haven't seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, so I'm going to put that out there. That said, I wasn't in the courtroom. It was very crazy for jury selection, so getting in was not easy, and you couldn't get into the overflow, and it was not fun. I think we were only allowed in the overflow that day, and I couldn't get in. I do know for a fact they asked. I was told they asked, do you know who Johnny Depp is? And Johnny Depp all the jurors said yes or whatever. They all said, yeah, we know who he is. They said, do you know who Amber Heard is? And I think like a couple, I was told, raised their hands. So obviously he's far more well known than she is, because he's been around a lot longer and he's had these very successful film roles. So he's known around the world. So I do know that the jury was made up of, and you have to keep in mind too, this is not top of mind. They might know who Johnny Depp is, but this whole case was not top of mind, I don't think, for these jurors in Fairfax County, okay? They're probably not following this.
Right. I mean, this Hollywood drama all of a sudden is plopped down here.
Right. So they're probably not doing that. But I do know that there was one gentleman who appears to be in his late 50s or 60s. He's one of the jurors. And there's another guy, it looks like he's in his 30s, a woman, African-American woman who appears to be in 40s or 50s, Asian woman that appears to be 20s or 30s, and then I think 3 younger Asian men, like in their 20s. So obviously both sides, they did whatever they did, and they struck some jurors, and this is what they ended up with. So they thought, I'm assuming both sides thought that this panel could be fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's who they decided on. So that's some good background there and explanation. Here's an interesting question that comes from YouTube. The Makeup Mova asks, does anyone think the time limits the judge set hurt either side? Seems like both sides left out great points in their closing arguments, right? The judge clearly said both sides have 2 hours for closing arguments, and in fact, when it came to the rebuttals, Amber's side only had like 6 minutes or something, right? Whereas Johnny's team had longer. Linda, did this time limit, you think, hurt either side?
Well, we're used as lawyers to have time limits in closings. That's not unheard of. So, no, I don't think the closings. I don't know about the presentation of the case. It was the first time I've experienced seeing time limits in a state civil case. Quite frankly, I grew to like it as the time went on, because, people couldn't grandstand and play. They had to get their points in. But in terms of a closings, if you looked at them, they were all pretty much pre-written. And usually when you start a case, you start with your closing, and then you figure out how you're going to try your case. So I do not think that the time limits on closing hurt either side. Perhaps the Amber Heard team didn't use their rebuttal time wisely, but I thought that was probably one of the best moments in the trial for Rottenborn was his close, his 7-minute rebuttal time. He was succinct, he was short, and he made points.
Yeah, I mean, and also to your point about the judge keeping time limits for the rest, it's always good for the media and the viewers. We know what's coming up. We knew that closings were going to be on Friday. But to your point about Rottenborn, Marita Hoy Grindenhaug from Norway asked, Rottenborn came across as a really rude man and Bredehoff just attacked witnesses. Is that normal for attorneys, or is there a kind of polite way to be in court in the U.S.? What did you think of the demeanor of the attorneys, Neil?
Interesting question. I thought that at times some of the lawyers interrupted some of the witnesses. I think it was a very different case than we've seen, where lawyers have to constantly sort of tiptoe around or be very careful how they approach witnesses. I have yet to see in a case that I have watched or tried where lawyers cut off the witness in the middle of an answer and actually didn't have the judge say something like, let the witness finish. That's very unusual to me. I haven't seen that. So I think the way a lawyer treats a witness I think at some point, quite candidly, you have to feel like you have permission to do it. And I think at some point in this case, the lawyers that were cutting off witnesses, like I thought Camille must have felt like she had permission to do it.
Wait, Neil, now I have to cut you off like the attorneys were cutting off the witnesses because we're at our break. Neil Brockheim, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with much more here on the Lunch Hour, live from Fairfax, Virginia, in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Stay with us.
Right now, everyone, we're on lunch, and we got a 4-minute break. Nope, I can't bring it. Yes, I can. I think I can. Nope, I can't bring it. Nope, I think I can. I think I can. Just trying to bring that bigger. I just got a viewer there. We're on lunch, and the ones covering the lunch show in have the live cam in the court. They're on a break. We still have 2 minutes and 42 seconds of the break. For anybody just joining, we're on a break right now. The ones covering and waiting for the verdict is actually on a break. Hold on, my phone just timed out. I'll back up. As you can see, they're live jurors in Virginia. Resume deliberations day 3 on Wednesday, June 1st. I didn't realize I accidentally paused it.
to be a better way.
Welcome back to For the Record on Law and Crime. I'm Stacey Delicat coming at you live from Fairfax, Virginia, outside the county courthouse, where we are now in day 3 of verdict watch. I'm hearing the jury is just getting back to deliberations after a brief lunch break. They're basically in hour 13 now of deliberations after deliberating for about 2 hours Friday, then about 7.5 yesterday, and 3 and change this morning. These are my rough calculations here. Still anyone's guess when we are going to hear something. Of course, for those who may just be tuning in, this is in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation case, in which Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for $50 million, claiming an op-ed she wrote in the Washington Post back in 2018, declaring herself the victim of domestic violence, of sexual violence, and the headline ruined his career. Depp says he is the victim. This cost him everything. Heard countersuing for $100 million, claiming that Depp and his attorney, Adam Waldman, acting on Depp's behalf, initiated a smear campaign against her, calling her allegations a hoax. It is all played out here. We have been here for every step. Testimony, but we're also taking your questions live from Twitch, from Twitter, from Facebook, from YouTube. So keep sending those great questions. With me here live outside the courthouse this hour is none other than law and crime legal analyst Gene Rossi in the flesh. Gene, thanks for coming back.
Oh, my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
So Gene, you've been here with Jesse and Anjanette periodically.
Yes.
Did things look a little different to you outside the courthouse today?
When they're deliberating and there's no questions to the judge or anything like that, it always looks a little different. It's always the calm before the storm. It's always that it's like waiting for a hurricane, and the hurricane's probably going to be the verdict, which I think is going to shock a lot of people. But it is a little different. It's quiet. There are no legions of Johnny Depp fans or not so many Amber Heard fans. So it's a little different here today.
Yeah, I mean, we know for the many, many weeks of this trial, Jesse and Jeanette, I mean, they were getting in line while it was still dark out to get wristbands to get in the court. Today, you know, I showed up 8:30. They still had plenty of wristbands because we're not seeing the same kind of crowd of spectators.
Right. Well, the enthusiasm sort of died down a little bit. You know, when you're waiting for a verdict, it's like watching paint dry, and that's being very kind. But this deliberation period may last, I think, another 2 days, 3 days. I was just looking at the jury instructions. There are a lot of things the jury has to ponder. There are 3 statements on each side, and there are elements they have to go through. It could take till Thursday or Friday for a verdict or even a question.
That's interesting, Gene, because that was going to be my next question to you. I've been polling everyone today. Linda Kenny Bod, who's in our studio, is going to be joining us second, thinks Thursday. Two of our other guests, today. Two of our other guests think today. Today's Wednesday. So we had 3 people saying today. And Jeanette is seeming to think tomorrow morning, and you're thinking it could be a while.
I think it could be Friday, and here's why. We're not done with questions. I can't imagine you go through a 6-week trial and you only have 1 or 2 questions. I think we're going to get 2 or 3 more questions. That causes a little more time for them to go. I'm sorry. It's not only how we're getting a little anxious here, but
the anticipation.
I think Friday's doable, but you know what? Tassiography is reading tea leaves, okay, and trying to predict how long a jury will deliberate. I mean, it's like putting money on horses at the Kentucky Derby. You know, 80-1. Somebody won, 80-1 odds. You don't know how long or short a jury will deliberate. My longest was after a 5-week trial. It almost killed me. The jury deliberated 7 full business days. I can still feel the pain.
Wow. Okay, so here's a question that comes from Twitch user Sean Stoll. He says, does the jury have any limitations on what they can do once the trial is over? Can they sell their notes? Can they write books and reveal details about deliberations?
Okay, who asked that, Twitch?
This is Sean on Twitch.
Yeah, Sean, that's a fantastic question. At the state level in Virginia, once the jury is done, they can run their mouths, they can be called by the attorneys for each side, they can do whatever they want. They can't keep their notes. My understanding is they have a spiral notebook. That notebook is taken by the bailiff, and then those notes are destroyed unless the court orders otherwise. But at the state level in Virginia, they can do whatever they want. They can write a book. They can go on Law and Crime Network. They can be called by any of the attorneys. At the federal level, it's a little different. It depends on the jurisdiction.
Right. Okay. So once the case is over, if you're watching and your friend or family members are on the jury, have them call us. Once it's all over, we'd love to speak with them live on Law and Crime. All right. Let's go back to some more pivotal testimony from the case. And of course, we know that the testimony from Depp and Heard themselves has been some of the most compelling, certainly, of this trial. Let's now go to a clip from when Johnny Depp was under direct examination. Here is what he said. He lost as a result of the allegations against him.
I lost because that is not a thing that anyone is gonna just put on your back for a short period of time. I will live with that for the rest of my life because of the allegations and because it was such a high-profile case. So I lost then, no matter the outcome of this trial. I'll carry that for the rest of my days. And it never had to be that way. It never had to happen. And I don't quite understand why it did in the way that it did.
So let me bring in the rest of our panel that we have with us this hour. In addition to Jean, who's with me out here in Fairfax, we have Linda Kenny-Bodden, our Law and Crime Network host, with us in studio, and Janine Atamian, trial attorney, is still with us as well. Janine, this testimony about what Johnny Depp has lost, we've talked about this a little bit, but how compelling did you find it to be?
I think it was absolutely compelling. Again, like, he has that one phrase where he said, "I've lost nothing short than everything." And I really kind of was moved by that. I think if I were on the jury, I would be moved by that. Again, the way he actually testifies with this low voice, he comes across as sincere, he comes across as endearing, and he comes across as broken.
Yeah, Linda, do you agree?
I actually do agree. I thought he was a much better witness than I thought he was going to be initially. I think the phrasing in terms of also when he started out, the jury has to be thinking that he said he was doing this for his children so they could know the truth. So I do think that he came across, in my opinion, if I were his attorney, I would be very happy with his testimony.
So let's butt this up against some testimony from Amber when she was on the stand, and she talked about all of the threats she's received during this trial.
What do you hope to reclaim after this is over?
Protecting the secret that I did for as long as I did has taken enough of my voice. Johnny has taken enough of my voice. I have the right to tell my story. I have the right to say what happened to me. I have the right to my voice and my name. He took it long enough. I have a right as an American to talk about what happened to me, to own my story and my truth. I have that right. I hope to get my voice back. That's all I want. And I've said that from day one.
So look, Amber Depp, clearly emotional in that clip. If you heard this out of context, you would really feel for this woman, right, Jean? I mean, she this has not been easy on her. She's had threats. She's been living with this for years. I mean, how do you think the jury will find that sympathetic?
Well, here's my comment about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I agree with Janine and Linda Kenny-Bodden, who are in air conditioning, by the way. Yeah. We're in 98-degree heat. Okay, so
more humidity.
Forget you. Okay, but the thing about Amber Heard, it's something that I remember Spencer Tracy saying about acting. The key to acting is don't let them know you're acting. And when Amber Heard was on the stand, there were moments when I felt that it was genuine. The tears were genuine. But there were moments during her testimony where I think she kind of left her body and became an actress. And looking at the jury too much, it kind of unsettled me a little bit at times. And I can tell you this, in my own family, my two sons are big Johnny Depp fans, and they thought Johnny Depp hit a home run with the bases loaded. And Amber Heard, maybe a Texas single.
I like that analogy. Let's go now to another viewer question. This one comes from Robarth Melted Cheese Home Studio, quite a username on YouTube. We sort of chatted about this, but I think it's a question a lot of people continue to have. If the jury cannot make a decision or choice on who is right, will there be another question? What happens then? He's writing in from the Netherlands. Linda, what happens if the jury can't make a decision?
Yes, and I'm so glad Jean's here because that's usually determined by state law. And in the states that I practice, in a civil case, unlike a criminal case, if the jury cannot make a decision because they have votes, so let's say they're 4-3, whichever way they're going to be, then no one has carried the burden of proof. And that's it. There's no redos, no do-overs except for appeals. But Jean can tell me if the Virginia rules, civil rules, allow a redo.
Yeah. What's going to happen here if they can't make a decision?
Well, if you have a hung jury, I think you can retry the case. It's just like a criminal. I had a couple of civil cases. We had hung juries. First off, hung juries are miserable.
I know. I'm going to put this down. You know, it's like
retrying a case is like putting on a wet bathing suit. It's awful, and I've done several, unfortunately. But I think in Virginia you could do a But folks, we are not going to have a hung jury. We are going to have a verdict.
Okay. Well, you know, and also, can you just imagine? You know, first of all, 6 weeks to do this trial over the expense on both sides. I mean, what do you think their legal fees must be? I mean, these are, you know, high-profile Hollywood attorneys, big teams of attorneys.
I'm speculating. I think Johnny Depp's team, I'm speculating, maybe 25 to 30 million. I'm guessing on that. I'm guessing.
It's good to be one of his attorneys.
Yeah.
Someone asks, are the jury allowed to see a playback of the witnesses giving testimony, or do they have to rely solely on the transcript? That's George Marshall from Facebook. Do you know the answer to that, Jean?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Anyone want to chime in? You know, is it typical? Obviously, we have video. We're replaying the video all day long. You know, this video, though, is a full video that belongs to the media. Linda, can the video?
The judge wouldn't even allow the video to be shown in closing arguments. Many judges, even though, because why? We, the Law and Crime Network, although we should be, are not the formal record. And some judges are purists, as Judge Ascarati, as you can see that from her evidence ruling. They do not allow videos to be shown. Other judges I've been in cases will allow the video of the TV to be shown in closings. They can ask for a readback, but I think she said she wasn't inclined to give a readback, and she certainly didn't tell them about it. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, good answer. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, much more live out here from hot and humid Fairfax, Virginia. We'll be right back.
We are on a 3-minute break. You might want to call and set up that appointment. You took it off the bed. think it's not down to live court coverage.
Welcome back to For the Record here on Long Crime. I'm Stacey Delicat, joined by our very own Gene Rossi, live outside the Fairfax, Virginia courthouse, where jury deliberations have once again resumed in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. This after jurors took a brief lunch break. I want to get back to some of the great questions that have been coming in, and one question comes in from Miss Marissa on YouTube. I don't know if this has been asked before. It has been. But why is the trial set in Fairfax, Virginia, and not in California, where these stars live, where some of the drama happened? We know this was sort of an international story with them. But why are we here near your hometown of Fairfax, Virginia, Gene? Remind everyone.
Because there's a server that's owned by the Washington Post, and there were online distributions of this article, and it's in Fairfax County, Virginia. Also, there's a printing operation for the Washington Post in Fairfax County, Virginia. But most important, Virginia has a very favorable defamation statute that Johnny Depp is trying to take advantage of. And it's not the greatest for the plaintiff, but it's a little better. Plus, the cases move a little faster in Fairfax County than in other jurisdictions, believe it or not.
Wow. Well, as we talked about before, we know the judge in this case had set some firm time deadlines. Yes. This is when the openings, this is when the closings, this is how long you will have, although that may just be her style, right? Here's another question, and Anjanette Levy is with us too. She's restationed a little closer to the front of the courthouse now. Hey, Anjanette. We have a question from Winnie on YouTube who says, have there been any questions from the jury today or anyone? Have we heard anything?
We have heard no questions today. We would have heard about that had there been a question. Judge Ascarati, when there was the question yesterday, she brought the parties into the courtroom, put it on the record. We aired it right here live on Law and Crime. So I think this is such a high profile case that should there be another question, sometimes they'll handle those in chambers. They'll just, huddle and deal with it. But I think because of the high profile nature of this case, and we saw it in the Kyle Rittenhouse case as well, that all questions were put on the record, a transcript was taken, and then it was broadcast, obviously, to the public.
Okay, yes, I agree with you. I expect we will get some kind of word. We'll hear something. Again, when the question was brought up yesterday, at that time, the judge also addressed a motion that Johnny Depp's team had filed asking for some testimony, basically to be dismissed. The judge said, you know what, case is already with the jury. So I think, any developments we will find out about. And right now it has just been quiet as they deliberate behind the closed doors. Let's talk about some other crucial testimony in the case. Johnny Depp's team called an expert psychologist, Dr. Curry, to testify in regards to Amber Heard's mental health. Here is what the doctor found.
Work that you performed, did you perform any opinions with respect to Ms. Heard?
I did.
What were those opinions?
The results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
What is a diagnosis?
A diagnosis is a way that that psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody in the mental health field thinks about a disorder. It helps us to communicate a set of symptoms that a person is experiencing, and along with that set of symptoms, it tells other professionals a lot about how those symptoms might have developed, how that person might behave, perceive the world. It also drives treatment. The real purpose is to determine what sort of interventions will be most effective for the person.
So there's been a lot of criticism about this diagnosis. Linda, what was your take on Dr. Curry's testimony?
Well, initially, I was not happy with the Depp team not calling somebody who was not a board-certified psychologist, although I've been advised by a number of people that in psychology it's not considered as important as it is in medical doctors where they're MDs treating diagnosis. But I think the jury is going to look at Amber Heard and see for themselves, do they agree with Dr. Curry or disagree with Dr. Curry? Do they agree with Dawn Hughes, Dr. Dawn Hughes, or disagree with them? So they're going to take whatever the psychologist has to offer to them, and they're going to observe Amber Heard or have observed Amber Heard, and they're going to make their own conclusion based on their observations of her, whether Dr. Curry is credible.
Well, you mentioned Dr. Dawn Hughes, and she's the forensic psychologist that was called by Amber Heard's team, who presented a different view. Let's listen to that.
At the end of that process, considering all the data, did you arrive at any expert opinions?
Yes, I did.
All right, I'd like to start with your main expert opinions and then go through those. Can you please tell the jury what your main opinions were?
So like I said, there are opinions embedded within them, but the main opinion is that Ms. Heard's report of intimate partner violence and the records that I reviewed is consistent with what we know in the field about intimate partner violence, characterized by physical violence, psychological aggression, sexual violence, coercive control, and surveillance behaviors.
And what was the other main opinion that you had?
The second main opinion was that that Ms. Heard demonstrated very clear psychological and traumatic effects or the exacerbation of trauma from those statements that Mr. Depp made through his attorney. There were 3 statements that we evaluated to see how they affected her emotionally and psychologically, and it was my determination that they did.
And did you arrive at any diagnostic conclusions?
Yes, I did.
And what were those?
I diagnosed Ms. Heard with post-traumatic stress disorder.
So, Janine Tamian, how do jurors sort of reconcile the 2 different testimonies from these 2 different doctors?
Well, you have to remember that these are expert witnesses that are being paid to put on the testimony that they're putting on for their side. So always there's a bias there that can be inferred. But I thought with Amber's doctor, she came across as much more disorganized than Depp's doctor. She was missing notes. And then on rebuttal, Depp's doctor, talked about how they were clearing evidence of like faking the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I think that they did a good job at kind of knocking down her testimony. But going back to Depp's doctor's testimony, one of the things that's important in this particular case, she says that she's got borderline personality disorder, she's got histrionic personality disorder. She talks about how she can't help herself from lying. She's desperate for attention and approval. And that to me goes to malice, because one of the things is it's got to be that you knew it was false, or a substantial disregard for the truth. But then when she's testifying, Amber, she's talking about my truth. I'm allowed to tell my story. So maybe this is what she actually believes because she has these disorders. And I thought that was kind of an interesting, way to look at this. I mean, could that maybe help her that they had their expert come up and say that she suffers from these disorders and these qualities?
So go ahead, Jean.
Is it Janine?
Yes.
Janine, you hit the nail on the head. I was just reading the jury instructions, and for actual malice, it's a subjective test. And the reason you hit this on the head is Amber Heard may have all these maladies that they talk about, PTSD, histrionics, and all that. But if she subjectively thinks that she was abused, either physically, sexually, psychologically, or by jealousy in other ways, she wins. Even if she may be exaggerating, but if she subjectively believes she was a victim, there's no actual malice.
That's a very good point, and I'm glad you made that clarification. It's important to remind our viewers that the actual malice is a big part of what the jury has to decide upon. Not just were these statements defamatory, but were they made with actual malice? Following up about the psychologist, a YouTube user asks, this Stephen Lynn 85 asks, why didn't the court use a neutral psychologist for the case? Well, is there such thing, first of all, as a neutral witness? But I mean, is this because, both sides have to present their own experts? Like, could there have been anyone that would have been more neutral, Gene?
Please correct me, folks. There's no such thing as a neutral expert when it's called by one side or the other. The only neutral expert is if a judge appoints somebody for an incompetence hearing or some other purpose. But whenever any side calls an expert, they obviously will pay them. They obviously will vet them. And you're not going to call an expert that's going to rule against you. So you're never going to get an independent, unbiased, non-sympathetic expert, period.
And I mean, these experts are usually paid. So that it's not supposed to, but you're paid by one side.
Right.
So now it's 1:30 here in Virginia, almost 1:30. We're almost halfway through the day of deliberations, and Getmo Gaming, Jen Lowe asks, do you think a longer deliberation is worse for Johnny's side? Linda, what's your feeling on that? I mean, as this goes on longer, is it better for one side, worse for another?
No, I don't think we're at that point yet with 12 hours of deliberations, maybe by Friday, possibly. But we're the first day they were just picking up foreperson, maybe getting organized. Yesterday they came back, they were trying to figure out what they had to do, where were the issues, how do they understand it. Today they're deliberating really, and they may be voting. We haven't heard from them. They may be taking straw votes and seeing where there's some confusion. So I don't think it hurts or helps right now at this point. And Jean, I would say it just really quickly with regard to that issue that you brought up. Remember here, though, the actual malice is not like having to do with a newspaper. It's her. And she has to know what the truth is. She has to know whether she's assaulted with the bottle. She has to know these things. So if it's false, Johnny Depp wins. I don't think we have that, she's so damaged that she can't know what the truth is.
I respectfully disagree.
That's why we have lawyers.
All right, and with that, we're going to take another quick break. We'll be back with much more live here from the courthouse in Fairfax, Virginia. You're watching Law and Crime.
Looks like we're on a commercial break. Yep, we're on a commercial break. We are on a commercial break for another 1 minute and 43 seconds. If they come back with a verdict, I will go live with it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe.